Hello friends, in this session we will discuss about what is callback, what is async await and what is promise. So we will discuss about the differences. So on promise we have a separate session and you can check it out on our channel turtleconnect.com under the JavaScript tutorial playlist. Okay, and today's session we will only discuss the difference between callback, async await and promise. How can we use and why we use and what are the differences between using them. Okay, so let's discuss about callback. So basically callback is used to manage your async operations. Let's suppose you have something to call after the async operation. So you have to write some function or something and you have to call that function inside the another function which is async function. Okay, and basically callback, async await, promise, all these are used to handle async operations. So if you have a single async operation in your application, then it is okay, you can easily use callback, whatever you have to use callback, async await or promise. But if you have large amount of async operations nested inside nested, then you will definitely have to use promise with async await. Okay, so we will discuss one by one. So we will discuss callback first. So let's suppose we have three functions. Okay, so let's suppose we have an expression function here equal to, and inside this we have a set timeout. Okay, and what we will have to do, we will have a console here. Console.log a, and we have some time. Okay, so let's suppose we are giving a time it 1 second. Okay, similarly we have another function called b, which also have a asynchronous operation set timeout, which will print b, but its time is 2 seconds. And now we have another function c, and we will print c. Okay, so its time is 500 millisecond. Okay, so what will happen if we will call one by one a, b and c. So in console you can see C1 has been executed first because it has 5 milliseconds. A has executed first because it has 1 second, and B has 2 seconds. Okay, so what if you want something to be executed after A? Let's suppose you want to be in series in output, A first, B then C. Then what you can do? For that you can have to do, you have to call C, okay, inside this one, and you have to call B inside A. So basically you are calling methods inside one. Okay, so you are getting A, B, C. So you can also do like this, you can just pass it to B here. Okay, and you have a callback here. Okay, and you can pass here C, and you have here callback. Okay, so you will have a series of response A, B and C. Okay, but to manage these operations you are confusing what we are doing. We are calling one callback inside another, then we are calling inside another inside. Here we have only 3 of this one as a nested. Let's suppose we have 10 functions to be nested one by one. Okay, so that creates a confusing scenario called callback hell. and the code becomes very messy. Okay, so that becomes very hard to manage, understand. Okay, so for that what we do, we basically create promise for all them, and we use promise to maintain these situations. So for that what we do, we will erase it out, or you can comment it out in another. For that scenario, what we will do, we will do create promise. Okay, we will create afterward. Okay, where p1 equal to new promise. Okay, so we have in promise here with resolve and reject. Here we have resolve and reject with promise, and we have a set time for async operations, and we will resolve this one, and we will give, let's suppose, 1 second, and we have some response. Let's suppose I will print p1. Okay, so we have a promise p1. Now we have another promise p2 and p3. Similarly p3 and okay. Now what we will do, we will do same. We will have 1 second for p1, 2 seconds for p2, and 500 milliseconds for p3. So what we will do, we will have to execute like this: p1 dot, then okay, then okay, then we have success here, resolve case, fulfilled case. Okay, and we can console the value here, console.log s. Okay, similarly you are getting p1 as output, p2 for p3. Okay, but the same situation is here. You can see promise 3 is coming one first, p1 is again, p2 is afterwards. So for that what will we have to do, if you want to all promises at a series like p1, p2 and p3, then what we'll have to do, you will have to use promise dot all, and you will just pass p1 comma p2 comma p3, and then you will resolve it. Okay, console.log. Okay, so here what we are getting, p1, p2 and p3. Okay, but there is some situation like if we have reject here, then you will not get the response in all. Okay, then what you have to do, then you have to use the settle. Okay, so you have to use the promise all settled, then you will get the response like this: region and status rejected. Similarly you will have status and value here in the same order, p1, p2 and p3. Okay, but what if you want something like this response you want in the async operation of this one, and this one response you want in the async operation of this one? So how can you manage that one in this case? Okay, for that what you will have to do, you will have to write like that, and you will have to call this one, then only you will get the promise one success. Okay, and this will the promise two success, and then you will have to call promise 3 inside this one. Okay, then only you will get the exact response whatever you want. Okay, that means in the calling of promise 2, you will get the response of p1 so that you can reuse inside your p2 operations. Okay, similarly for p3 and this one. Okay, so this is the also doing the research, because if you comment this out, because we are having one reject. Okay, so what we have to do, we have to do resolve, then you can get something. Okay, similarly if you have here, then you have to resolve first, otherwise you will get error. Then you have to do, you have a catch here, and you can have a reject here as well inside your then or first. Okay, so it's become tough to manage all these. Okay, so in that scenario what we do, we use the async await to manage these all issues. Okay, so if the resolve is easy, you can do it by nested one. Using the nested, you can easily maintain. But if there is reject case, okay, then you have some issues. Okay, and if you have multiple 10 promises, then you have to write nested like this. Okay, so this also called issues. So that now we go for the third type, async await, which manage the promises well. It's called a synthetic sugar of promise. Okay, for promise. For that, what will we do? We will just comment it out, and we will create a asynchronous function called async function. Let's first double is my function name. Okay, and we have here await, and we have promise 1. Okay, similarly promise 2, promise 3. Okay, and here we should have arrow function to return. Okay, promise. And what now we have to do? Okay, what you have to do, you can return this await here in array form, so that you can get the response. Okay, all the response of promises. Okay, what you have to do now, you have to call this async operations using this then. Okay, then here you will have to get the value of all values. Okay, console.log a. So here in console you can see we are getting p1, p2 and p3 in a very convenient way. Okay, here what will happen, if you have some dependency of p3 is dependent on the p2 response and p2 is dependent on the p1 response, here these are in synchronous way. Okay, so let's suppose you have to use like where a equal to await p1, and if you want to use this p1 response inside p2, you can easily use here as passing a parameter. Okay, similarly you have you can use the b response here, so to get c. So this basically async await makes your calls synchronous, so it behaves like a synchronous. After completing first one it will execute second, and similarly after executing second it will execute third one. Okay, So now you can have easily return a comma b comma c. Okay. So you will get p1 p2. Sorry. Okay. So you will get the response at p1 p2 p3 inside this one. Okay. So if you have dependency, you can easily manage your operations. So that code is quite complex. You can see P1 is inside, P2 is inside P1, P3 is inside P2. So it looks very complex and messy. So these all can be converted into simple line with using the async await, which makes your promise as a synchronous operation. You can easily maintain your values inside the dependency. You can easily maintain the dependencies of all the promises. Okay. Now what will happen if you have some reject here? If you have some reject here, you will not get any value. Okay. So for that, you can do like that. Try and try and catch. You can return something if you have some error. You can return something null. Okay. So it will be error. If there will be error, you will get the catch part null. Okay. So again converting to resolve. Okay. Okay. Now what we will do, we will use the generator function. Okay, to maintain all these operations, async operations. So we will basically use the generator with async await. Okay, and promise. Okay, so how can we use that with async operations with generator? So for that we have to do, we have a function. We will create a function called, we'll copy this one and we will convert this method into generator function. Okay, you don't have to return them. Okay, for this you have a asterisk here for generator and we have an yield here via yield and we have a yield here. Okay, so how to execute this code of a generator? So basically we use the generate next, we use the next to handle the generator functions. Okay, so for that what will we do? We will just create a async scope. If we will test it here inside this one. Okay, what we will do, we will just console.log. Okay, now what we will do, we will do await. Okay, and we will first create a object of generator function. So we have a constant, let's suppose a equal to, okay, and we have a dot next. Okay, so you can see in output you have a value even and then false. That means we are getting the value. Similarly, if you do the next second time, you will got P2. If you do third time, you will get P3. Okay, there any issue? P1, P2, P3, we are all are resolved. Here we are using P1, P2, P3, and we are using, okay. And last scenario what we will do, we'll call one more time to see what will happen. We are not getting P3, okay. We can also check with okay. This one is not required. This is throwing error. Okay, so all the three cases are output okay, consoled, and we in the last we are done true with value undefined. Okay, that means generator is also working properly with async await and promise. You can also use this with a for loop. So for that you can do sync await for let value of generator. Okay, and we have console.log. So we will create a for loop for sorry, we have to write after that. Okay, so what will you have getting? You are getting P1, P2 and P3 as response in series. Okay, so these all were in this session. Okay, so we have what we have covered. We have covered callback and what is callback hell, and then we have discussed promise and what are the issues when using the promise. Okay, so to handle that issues we used async await to manage promises well in a maintained way. Okay, so that was basically covered inside this topic. Okay, so these are the async await for the promises. Okay, so the question arises in interview that you many interview asks in many interviewer ask what is the difference between async await and promise, why we use async await if we have promise. So the answer is that if we want to manage all promises well in a easy way or in a nice code, means you can write a simple code. Okay, so that we have to use async await. Okay, so that and we basically overcome the issue of callback here and we use promise, and if the code is messy in promise then we use async await to manage them easily. If we have some dependency of promises responses then we use async await so that we can easily use them, and we should avoid the code like messy code like dependency of P1, P2, then P3, then so we will come with another topic in the JavaScript in next session. So stay tuned with this channel, subscribe our channel, and thanks for watching this session.